Hello everyone. So my name is Aisling and I'm joined today by Jim, who is a GROW member who I've been speaking to a bit on Pobble and through email as well, because he has a very interesting and different way of incorporating Gaeilge gach into his life. So you're very welcome today, Jim. I'm so excited to get to know you a bit better. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me.
Oh, good old Margaret.
So do you want to introduce yourself a little bit as Gaeilge for everyone?
Is Misha Jim Keenan. Is Americanach me. Tommy Imochoni in Massachusetts. And that's the best of my Gaeilge right now.
Well, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So do you want to tell us maybe a little bit about your connection to Ireland and what kind of inspired you to learn Gaeilge in the first place?
Well, all of my ancestors are from Ireland. I would, if this were Harry Potter, I would probably be in Slytherin and very proud of being have no muggles in my
pure blood.
Pure blood. And I grew up in a little town called Braddock, which is outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Pittsburgh at that time, and to some extent still, had very strong neighborhoods where people of one ethnic group would live together. And so I grew up in an Irish neighborhood. All the people around me spoke with Irish accents. I was, I think, nearly 12 years old before I had a school teacher who did not speak with an Irish accent. And so I myself had to go to a special school to learn how not to speak with an accent. It was a school for radio announcers, and the first thing they did was taught us how to correct our accent. But even so, because it was all my youth, if I get around Irish people, I will unconsciously just sort of fall back into a sort of rhythmic pattern without even realizing it. And maybe 20, 30 years ago, I was speaking with some Irish people, and we were talking for a while, and one of them just said to me, "And where did you come by that nice lilt?" and I was so embarrassed because I had, accidentally just returned to my original accent, and I was so afraid they thought I was just mimicking them, and that they didn't know that I actually had a history. But the funny thing is that I did not know the Irish people spoke Irish. I didn't know that until I was in high school. I thought, because I was surrounded by people speaking in Irish accents, I thought that Irish just meant you spoke English with an Irish accent.
Wow.
And so even though my grandmother had come from Dublin, I don't think Irish was emphasized in her family. And so, it was, I don't know, I might have been 14 or 15 years old before my father finally told me that, yes, our Keenan family came from the Fermanagh area. And he showed me a book that had a coat of arms in it. And he said, this is our coat of arms. We're Irish. But I still didn't know that there was an Irish language. When we heard things like Gaelic, the expression Gaelic, I thought that this meant the language that ancient Irish people spoke, instead of the living Irish Gaelic that was every day in Ireland even then. So that's my original connection to Ireland, sort of just by blood. But after I learned, and I don't remember exactly what age I was when I learned that there was a living Irish language, that I tried to learn some of it, because I've always been, an avid language learner. And I got some books, but of course I ran into what I consider to be the initial major stumbling block, and we'll talk about that later, problems learning Irish. And because this happened before the internet, there wasn't this wealth of resources where I could go and hear people actually speak and, relate the way words looked with the way words sounded and things like that. And so I gave up. I
Okay.
just set it aside and thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to learn that, even if it was the language of my ancestors. But as I grew older, I thought about um, all the people, because one of the things that we did keep in our family was a list of who our ancestors were and where they came from. So for instance, in the early 1800s, Michael Keenan actually sailed out of Cork. So I had this tiny connection with you in Cork.
Yeah.
That one of my ancestors, who apparently had a teach taranne
Oh, no way.
in Cork, and he sailed to the United States, and he was the immigrant,
Yeah.
and then from the Keenans, and so we kept that all the way along. So I knew the other families, the Lynches, the Naylors, the Hugheses, who were all from various parts of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go to Ireland. I wanted to sort of, in my mind, it was like making a circle,
Mm-hmm.
that my ancestor had left and now his descendant would return.
Mm-hmm.
And, even if I didn't do more than visit, it would be symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
It would be symbolic of not just my family, but kind of a big Irish circle that I was a part of. And so I never got the chance.
You never got the chance to go to Ireland?
Never got the chance. The closest I got was Wales, and that was courtesy of some friends who they lived near Liverpool,
Okay.
and so we made it as far as Liverpool, and then they drove us down to Wales. That was it. I never got across the water.
Wow, that's
I
so
was
interesting.
I was like Moses. I could see it, but I couldn't get there.
Trying to break the water to walk across to
It did
Dublin.
not part for me.
Wow, that's so interesting. So I don't think I've actually met someone who's learning Irish that hasn't been to Ireland. Do you think that kind of brings about its own challenges? Do you think going and maybe going to a Gaeltacht where they speak Irish, do you think that might have helped you, or do you kind of see it as any challenge?
This is really a good question. It's really a good question. Um, my sister did get to go to Ireland. She married a man, Jimmy Flynn.
Very Irish name.
Yes, my mother was happy that she stayed in the tribe. And that's actually what my mother said. and and she went and she stayed there, and she said, if you go to Ireland, you'll know you're Irish or not. And she decided that she wasn't really Irish, but that her husband Jimmy was absolutely Irish.
So
There
it
was
was kind of
just,
a feeling.
yeah, something about the
Interesting.
feeling.
Yeah.
But the thing for me is, all these years, I've had these incredible, powerful, and inexplicable feelings related to Ireland. Really deep, strong emotional feelings. And I had no idea, why would I have these feelings? I mean, I was born in the United States. I was raised American. Why do I have these powerful feelings? I was talking with Don Mullen. Don Mullen is a very interesting man, a peace activist, and involved in all sorts of humanitarian things. And we had this lovely conversation over lunch, and I felt comfortable enough with him to sort of open my heart in this way and ask him, why did I have these feelings?
Mm.
And he said that he thought that as a child I had just absorbed from the atmosphere around me,
Mm.
that I had gotten it sort of baked into me without even realizing it. And so I know that if God willing I ever get the chance to actually put my feet on the dirt in Ireland, that it will be a very emotional experience for me.
Yeah. It's
So
interesting because, you know, you grew up in a place that was so Irish, even though it wasn't in Ireland. And that could be quite a common experience across other ethnicities as well. If they grow up in a very Hispanic household or area, they never feel fully at home somewhere. They might feel that they have a connection somewhere else that's calling them. So it's so interesting, and I think it's also fascinating that you mentioned your sister not having that connection, but her husband having that connection, and that it might be just something inexplicable. You know, you go there and you say, okay, I don't know, or else you could go there and you could say, this is my home, this is where I feel, you know. So it's nice though that you have, I suppose, a community online as well, where you can connect to other Gaeilge and other people who have that same connection, and maybe understand your own emotions a little bit better, you know?
I am so happy now.
Yeah.
I am really happy because I had gotten another book about learning Irish a few years ago, and I decided, okay, you know, if I'm ever going to do this, I have to do it.
Yeah.
And I was not successful. Again, I was not successful. But then I stumbled across, can you guess what I stumbled across on the internet? I'll give you a hint. It begins with B.
No idea.
No idea. It's really, it's a fog. I can't guess. I saw a video that Siobhan had done. And this was like music to my ears, because as it happens, Siobhan has the accent of the Irish I grew up around.
Oh.
And so it was like I had this feeling, my people.
Yeah.
I know that might sound like I'm daft or something, but
No, not at all.
I just, I thought suddenly, here I've got a person who is saying the Irish, I can see the Irish. And from that time, suddenly Irish started making sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the Irish that was impossible for me to learn suddenly just started coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Where now I could look at a word and I would be, oh, that's Awalia, you
Mm.
know, and not it's a Bahail, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 So, and that's a pretty big thing. It's a
Yeah.
pretty big thing. So ever since then, you know, I joined Bitesize Irish. That was my first step. That was my big leap,
Mm-hmm.
a leap I've never looked back from or regretted. Then I started looking around for, okay, uh, now I have to find some other Irish language learning material that fits in, because based on my experience of myself learning languages, I know that I generally fare better if I have multiple inputs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got
That's a great
that
book. Mm-hmm.
and have been working through that. And I know that sooner or later I will get to that. But I've already looked at the second one, and you know it strikes me as not being an impossible dream at all.
That's excellent.
So anyway, that's sort of my story up to
Yeah.
the point where I really started to be able to learn Irish.
Yeah. I'm just I'm getting sidetracked here, but when you lifted that book up, I have a similar one here
Ah,
specifically for
yes.
grammar just beside me. So we're never, I don't think whatever level you're at, you're never far from one of these books. You always need to go back to that. But it's your story is extremely moving, and it's really beautiful that you had this kind of deep connection to something and something calling you. Do you think that you know, you grew up in a community that was very Irish and you always knew about your ancestry. Do you think it was something that became particularly important to you at a certain stage in your life, or do you think it was always important to you to understand what Irishness meant to you and your family?
The if I may go back to my sister for a second, she was 8 years younger than me. And we had moved out of the Irish neighborhood by the time she was born. And so she didn't get the same level of exposure as I did. And I always thought that was probably a factor in her feelings. And in terms of my Irishness, again, I'm going to sound like a crazy person.
Not at all.
But I always told my sons, I said, look, you come from a line of scholars and warriors, brave people, people with endurance and heart. And that's you too. You have endurance, you have heart, you are brave, and this is how you should face life. And so you can see that at a really very visceral level. You know, it's like I would study about the Troubles because, you know, I would read books in English before I was learning Irish, and so, you know, I was learning about 1916, and I was learning all these things, and I would read, and sometimes I would just cry, and I was just having this intense connection, and if I could pass on to my own children anything, it would be this sense of being. What makes your being? So when someone asks you who you are, you don't just think of yourself as a name or a job. You're something much bigger in the flow of time and life. And it just happens that Irish is my time in my life. That's it. You know, even though I grew up in the United States, and I'll say sometimes that Ireland is like a rose, and over here in the United States, I'm just like a clump of mud that came in contact with this rose. And so if you can sense any of the fragrance of that rose from me, it's not because of me, it's because of the rose I came in contact with. And that kind of, I'm summing up my whole life and soul for you. I don't know if this is what you wanted to hear.
It's really lovely, and I think you're far too humble. You have to appreciate that so much of that has come from you, because there's so many people with Irish ancestry or Irish people who might not put the effort in to kind of understand that. You know, I think everyone has some ancestry and heritage and history to be proud of that has formed them, and that they can kind of fall back on if they feel that they're not strong enough or good enough or able to overcome something in life. But you have to also channel that, you know. We're very philosophical, aren't we? We're very we're very profound today. So the first few emails you sent me, you were talking about Imma Gaeltacht Beag or Beag Hain. So this is fantastic. It's basically your monthly newsletter, telling us all about the kind of different diverse ways you're bringing Irish into your life. But do you have some copies there? Yeah. Oh, brilliant. That's wonderful. Yeah. That's a great thing to keep and have a copy of them all.
I've been saving them. Originally, you remember from our conversation a few months ago now, once I started, I felt I had the ball rolling, so to speak, in terms of Irish. I wanted to try and connect with maybe other Irish language speakers who were close. So I went on the Conran na Gaeilge website and found that there was supposed to be a branch in Massachusetts, and I contacted them. To make a long story short, I was never able to get yet in contact with the branch here in Massachusetts. I hope that will change. But I finally said to the person who I've been contacting in Dublin, I said, well, if I can't get in touch with the branch there, then I am going to consider myself my own little branch of Conradh na Gaeilge. And that I was going to consider that my house was also a Gaeltacht. I was going to make my house a Gaeltacht, a one-house Gaeltacht. And so I thought, okay, one of the things that I had always wished I had done in various endeavors was to sort of keep a diary of how I went along. Because sometimes we will judge our performance by where we are at the moment rather than how far we have come, because we forget how far we've come. This is one good thing about having a teacher. Part of the teacher's job is to remind you how far you've come. So I decided I would have, in effect, a little nuachtan for my Gaeltacht. And that I would send it to some people who I thought, well, they're my friends, or I like them, or I have some connection with them, and it will serve a couple of different purposes. It will act as an accountability, so that it's like having accountability partners, where you've got someone who, if you don't study for a while, says to you, "Are you studying?" But in this case, I'd be volunteering what I was studying. It also served as a motivation for me, because I could look back and see what I had just done and plan how to move forward to the next thing, so that I was always going forward. And so I've sent it to you. I posted the links to the 3 issues that, as of today's date, have already been published. I posted that to Bitesize Pubble, so that all the GROW members on Bitesize can see them. And I've sent them to various other friends. I have some friends in Drogheda.
Lovely.
Just who I met by accident through another friend here. I was in a Zoom meeting and mentioned, because I tell everybody I'm learning Irish, and this woman said, "Oh, I have friends who live in Ireland. Let me give you their email address." And
That's wonderful.
So I wrote them, and we've started, an email friendship. But I sent them a copy of that too. So it's also been, there's this nice word that's used both in Irish and in English in Ireland, crack. And so making this has also been a bit of crack.
You've gotten the kind of meaning of crack perfectly there. It's a bit of crack. It's a bit of fun. It's wonderful though, and I think what you're saying there about you tell everyone you speak Irish, that's also very important, because you never know who speaks Irish. Anywhere I've gone in the world, if I bump into someone, it doesn't matter if they're English speaking, Irish speaking, I'll tell them, and I guarantee you they'll know of someone who learned Irish, or they'll know some words, or they'll say Pogue Mahone or something like that. They'll know a little bit, so it's definitely worth throwing into conversation.
Yeah, I learned Pogue Mahone. That means nice to meet you, right?
It does, yeah, it does. Spot on. So then I suppose I have just 2 more questions for you to pick your brain, but this has been a really lovely conversation, and it's kind of nice to get into the more emotional side of the language as well. But to go back to the nitty-gritty learning, what advice would you give to someone who's learning Irish in terms of what was the most difficult for you? What do you think a learner should know?
The most difficult thing, particularly for a person who comes from an English background, is interference from the English language. And by that, I mean English orthography, so that the way things are spelled in English. You're going to look at the Irish letters, and it's important that when you look at, and this is just me speaking, I'm not on Mount Sinai giving revelations or anything, but when you look at an Irish word, even though your mind will think it's written in English letters, it's not. It's written in Irish letters. And you have to make that adjustment so that when you see BH, you know, if you take a word like SUBHUMAN, that's an English word. You have to be so into the Irish spelling that when you look at the word subhuman, you go, subhuman.
Yeah.
You can't think that Irish is written with an English alphabet. You have to think Irish is written in Irish. And it just happens. I mean, obviously you would look at Spanish or French and it would never occur to you to go, oh yeah, that's written in English.
Mm-hmm.
But because of history, there's a certain connection with English in Ireland. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to step away from that. Yeah. I mean, really step away from that. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, your life will become so much easier. I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. I'll give you your money back if it doesn't.
Yeah, that's very true. You have to, I think the kind of consonant groupings and vowel groupings in Irish can be very difficult. When you see A, O, I together, you're saying, what, how do I say this? But you have to just, exactly as you said, just detach that English sense or English logic and say, okay, no, this is very different. That's very good advice. So finally, what is Bitesize to you? I know you referred to it as being kind of a breaking point for you in terms of making the language much more accessible and easy to learn, but what else is Bitesize to you if someone is thinking of joining Bitesize?
Bitesize is a great community. I'll tell you what, you can join up, you know, there's a free trial you can try. And from that free trial, the first thing you will get is the feeling, wow, this is a lot easier than I thought. Mm. That's the first thing you'll get. The second thing you'll get is, wow, these are nice people. I like these people. And you might get those two things, you know, in a different order, but you'll get both of those things. And then if you decide that you really want to get into Irish, and you decide to become a GROW member, which is sort of the full participation member, then you'll be introduced to all the other people of various levels. People who are beginners like me and people who are highly skilled at Irish, who are all happily associating with each other, holding each other's hands metaphorically, helping each other out, entertaining each other, and basically being companions along the journey. And that's, you know, with my newsletter, I called it my Irish learning journey, because that's how I think of it. And I think of all the people who are learning along with me as companions, friends. Mm-hmm. And you will definitely get that sense. For instance, when you first sign up to as a GROW member and you introduce yourself to the group, it may surprise you that suddenly, you know, a dozen people out of nowhere are writing to you and saying, welcome, you know, glad you're here. Mm-hmm.
It's something quite special on Fáilte Isteach, which is the welcome page. Whenever anyone joins and they might just mention, oh, I'm learning Irish, but I find this thing difficult. And everyone will say, don't worry, I found that hard as well, and it'll go away. People are so supportive, and just because they want to and because they've been there, I think, as well, and they're happy to find that community. Well, I'm so glad you found Bitesize, and I'm so happy to and honoured to have heard your story, because it really is quite special.
And can I say one other thing about Bitesize?
Go for it.
There's one other thing. You know, I heard this from Owen, not directly and personally, but through the Bitesize site, about Gaeilge gach, which means Irish every day. And in my own world, my own little Gaeltacht here, I try to do that. Irish every day. One of the things that we do when we learn languages is often we learn a language as though it's out there somewhere. The language we're learning is out there. The language is not in here. And my attitude toward language learning is that you're going to learn better and you're going to learn faster when the language is incorporated in who you are every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that to the nth degree. Like me, I go overboard. I'm like, not only Gaeilge gach law, I'm like Gaeilge gach law arfad, like, like constantly every day, taking the attitude that Irish is my normal language. Even though I speak mostly English, Irish is really my normal language, and English is my other language. You know, so that trying to put myself in the position that English is actually my second language, but somehow I've just forgotten my first one, and I'm recapturing it. I'm unveiling it again inside myself.
And that kind of is more forgiving as well, isn't it? You know, if you don't know a word, it's like, oh, I've just forgotten that. It's there somewhere, but I just don't know it. I've forgotten it. Yeah.
That's right. It's in there.
Yeah.
And I use all sorts of things. You know, it's like make cards, lots of cards. Put yellow stickies on everything. You know, print out stuff and recite them like scripts from movies. Read stuff like that.
Yeah.
From Bitesize Irish. Write things in your notebooks. Lots of stuff in notebooks. Just write. Fill one notebook and start on another notebook. It's like, look at books. Read the dictionary. You know, bia means food. Read the dictionary, and next thing you know, you've learned biachlar and bialon. You know, and it's just from bia. So
exactly, yeah. So you're always progressing, you know.
And read and learn, because you're not just learning a language disconnected from its history and culture. Read. Don't be afraid to learn things that children would learn. These are, like, see? Well, gotta get that in the camera. Just learn, do these things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, this book just came out.
Oh, that's a beautiful book, isn't it?
This book is the best book I have read since I can't remember when.
It's beautiful.
Everybody should read this book who's learning Irish. And if you've learned a little Irish, the experience is so much better because you can take a good guess at how to say the words that he puts in there.
Yeah, and you can say them and they might stick in your head maybe a bit longer as well. Oh, I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. And then you can explore like things. You get a book like this in Irish, which I loved as a child. Just open the book and, oh, I know that word.
Yeah.
You're going to learn August. August. Everybody knows August. Hey, there's August. I see August. So you're always able to make your learning. If you don't make your learning fun, if learning becomes a chore, you're going to give it up. It's just like exercise. If you're doing calisthenics, I'm so tired of this. And when you're learning Irish, and no matter what degree you're learning Irish to, even if the only reason you're learning Irish is because you're somewhere and you're learning Irish dancing and you just want to be able to say the words right, you know, and that's all you need. No matter what level you're learning, let that be alive to you. Don't let it just be a thing like sitting in an exhibit or dried up on a plate somewhere.
Yeah.
It's alive and it's you and you can be alive in it. And so people talk about, you know, Irish fading away. No, if you're learning Irish, Irish is not fading away.
True.
No matter what you learn, even if you never get beyond Conna Satatu, and as long as someone says to you Conna Satatu and you say, oh, Tameguma.
Irish is alive.
Irish is alive.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Eontach.
And the more you do it, if you're like somebody like me, the more you do it, the more you're going to love it. And the more fun you're going to have with it. I mean, look at me. I already wrote a little story in Irish. Yeah. And I'm just a beginner.
Yeah.
And I'm going to write poetry.
I don't
know what I'm doing, but I'm having a heck of a good time.
I can't wait to see what comes out. There's definitely going to be a novel by Jim Keenan in the future. I can just see it.
God willing, we'll see.
Well, look, it was absolutely wonderful and a pleasure to chat to you. I could chat to you all evening, but I think we've gotten such wonderful messages there. I want to keep it at that. But gur míle magat, and I suppose I'll be chatting to you on Pobble very soon.
Good up, to you
All right.
too, Aisling. How wonderful it is to talk to you. Thank
It
you.
was wonderful. Slán.
Slán.